Welcome to Soul Path Alchemy, the place where we talk about the things most people avoid: sex, relationships, grief, desire, betrayal, healing, and everything in between. It's honest, it's unsanitized, and if it's what you've been craving, you're in the right place. I'm Annie O'Brien, psychotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist, and if you need more info, it's all in the bio. Let's begin. Heads up, this podcast isn't therapy. It's bold, blunt, and irreverent, but it's not a substitute for professional help. Full disclaimer is in the blurb below. Okay, on today's Freud Made Me Do It, we're going to cover projective blaming. Everybody has done this and everybody has experienced it. So if someone hurts you, blames you, and then says, "You're so reactive," and then you flinch, you've just been hit with projective blaming. It's not an argument, it's a hit and run, emotionally speaking, of course. And they expect you to pay for the bumper damage. So projective blaming in the psychoanalytic lab is projection plus externalization with a dash of denial. So while Freud laid the groundwork with projection, Melanie Klein and the objects relation theorists took it further, seeing this as a form of evacuative defense in early ego development. This usually kicks in during toddler years. Think, "I didn't do it, Teddy did it." And unfortunately, some folks never outgrow it. In short, it's what happens when the fragile ego outsources shame to survive. So projective blaming is when someone feels something uncomfortable, be it shame, insecurity, aggression, and instead of owning it, they launch it at you like a psychological grenade. They weaponize their inner chaos by assigning you the role of villain, judge, or attacker, and then act surprised when you're hurt. You don't get a script, but you do get the blame. So now for some real-life examples. So the girlfriend who says, "You made me feel crazy." She asked you for clarity, then she spiraled. Later she says, "I wouldn't have lost it if you hadn't pushed me." No, she lost it because her nervous system is allergic to confrontation. And now you're the problem because you wanted a calm conversation. Or the friend who ghosts you and then says, "You abandoned me." Well, she vanished, she didn't text, and then she says, "I felt like you weren't there for me." Well, she ghosted you and then blamed you for the silence. That's not friendship, that's emotional gaslighting with sprinkles. And then you have the individual who says, "Oh, you triggered me." No, I reflected you, and instead of saying, "Ouch," you weaponized the pain and made me the perpetrator. So that's not a rupture in relationship, that's a hall of mirrors. And often people are quite tired of playing the monster. Then you have the guy who says, "Oh, you're so controlling." She asked if he could text when he gets home. Now he's shouting about freedom. He's not been controlled, he's been asked for emotional accountability. But that hits his shame button, so he throws a tantrum and a control label at it. And then you have an individual who says, "You're always criticizing me." Perhaps she said, "Can we talk about how you speak to me in front of others?" And he heard, "You're a bad man." She asked for respect and he turned it into humiliation. Now she's doing emotional repair for a wound she didn't inflict. You could take this example as well. The ex who says, "Oh, you made me this way." He cheated, he lied, and then when confronted, he says, "You made me feel inadequate." Translation, "I felt small inside, so I lit the relationship on fire, and now I want you to hold the ashes." I'd pass on that if I were you. Here are some general day-to-day examples that everyone will recognize. So say your coworker misses a deadline and then snaps, "Why didn't you remind me?" Or your partner forgets dinner but says, "Well, you didn't seem so excited about it anyway." Or your friend bails last minute and says, "You probably didn't really want me to come." Projective blaming is the emotional equivalent of throwing a tantrum hysterically, then saying, "You made me do it." So why should you care? Because it erodes trust. You start apologizing for things you never did, you take ownership of wounds that don't belong to you, and you confuse emotional abuse with conflict. And worst of all, you lose the ability to see clearly because their story becomes louder than your truth. So, how to change all of this? If you're the one doing it, pause, breathe, and ask, is this about them or is this about something unresolved in me? Projection feels powerful in the moment, but it always leaves a shame hangover. If you're the one on the receiving end, don't absorb it, reflect it back. You could possibly say something like, I think that might be how you feel, not who I am. So you're a mirror, you're not a dumping ground, and you're not a storyline in someone else's unprocessed childhood. So, my pet hate is when someone tells me, you made me feel. So I always want to say, no, you felt, I existed, and your feelings didn't like that. So that's not cause and effect. That's emotional outsourcing disguised as grievance. So projective blaming is what happens when people refuse to face their own mirror, so they smash yours instead. Freud made you do it, but now that you know it, you can stop doing it or stop letting others do it to you. To sum it all up, projective blaming essentially says, it was you, not me, even though it was definitely me. That sums it up. So thank you for listening, and if you got something out of this that you felt was valuable or educational, like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.